Hello BookTube, welcome back to my channel. My name is Juan. I am just one reader and this is my reading wrap-up for the month of July. Although I will be including some books that I think I finished in June that I never got the chance to talk about in a wrap-up. But anyway, let's jump right in. The first book that I read was Sondheim and Company by Craig Zadan. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I think it's a good introduction to the life and work and legacy of Stephen Sondheim. It's also not only a biography, but it's also a it takes you backstage and tells you how some of these musicals and staples of the American musical theater got to the stage, how they were written, created, directed, performed, and all of that backstage drama that we love, I love. I gave this book 3 stars because I think it was just a little too basic, but it's a good introduction to Stephen Sondheim. Then I read Jamaica In by Daphne du Maurier, or as my British friends pronounce it, Jamaica In. Jamaica In is honestly not my favorite du Maurier novel. You can see that this is earlier du Maurier. You can see that she is still finding her voice and honing her craft, although you can see that she has all of the staples of the good du Maurier novels and stories. This book has all of those. We have this young, female, naive protagonist with a huge Oedipal complex and with a huge Oedipal conflict in general. This book is incredibly Freudian, by the way. Like Sigmund Freud could have written about Daphne du Maurier. If only he had read these books, he would have seen a lot of his theory represented so perfectly in her writing. So we have that kind of protagonist. We have the English melancholy moors. We have all of this atmosphere that is very present in du Maurier's work. My problem with this book, if you could call it a problem, is that it does feel like a very early novel for her. Having read some of her gems, some of the gems that she has written, this just felt a little too simple, a little too predictable, and the execution of the writing was not always up to par, but I enjoyed it. I also gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Fitz and the Full Trilogy by Robin Hobb, which was the last trilogy in the realm of the Elderlings, and boy, oh boy, this did not disappoint. As a whole, I gave this trilogy 5 stars, just 5 out of 5. It was so special, so emotional. It really went with a bang. The finale was just perfect. The climax was wonderful. The resolution, the last line in this entire trilogy was just perfect. Perfect Robin Hobb. But let me tell you, these books are not perfect individually, but once you read all of them and they become a cohesive entity, then you can really appreciate them. And I am just so incredibly grateful that I read Robin Hobb, all 16 books in the series and the novella. I am so unbelievably grateful that I did. I cannot believe that many readers watching this video haven't made Robin Hobb a priority. You have to read Robin Hobb's The Realm of the Elderlings. So the first book, Fool's Assassin, was 5 out of 5 stars. This book is perfect. Everybody agrees that this book is perfect. I honestly cannot see how this book could be better. Then the second book is where we ran into some problems. Fool's Quest was honestly not a good book for me. I gave it 3 stars, and that was a generous rating. I think the writing was all over the place. I think the editor was not doing their job. I think it felt very chaotic, very disorganized, very meandering and repetitive and slow. And I was just kind of scared because the third book was coming up, but I did not need to be afraid. I had to trust Robin Hobb, and she delivered the goods with the final installment. Assassin's Fate was also a 5-star book for me. Not just for the ending, the climax and the denouement of the story, the resolution and the closing of the story are perfect, but the entire book is so dark and whimsical at the same time and different in a way. It feels fresh, but it's just such a delicious book. So the Realm of the Elderlings, specifically the Fitz and the full trilogy, is something that I think I will treasure and cherish forever. Then I read The Paper Menagerie and Other Stories by Ken Liu. This is a collection of short stories, a very celebrated collection, and I did not like it. I really feel like an outsider, or like I'm being rebellious or a contradictorian, but I genuinely did not like this book very much. There are some really great stories, especially the title story, The Paper Menagerie, is really brilliant. But the rest of the book to me felt like a not very successful, not very well executed mishmash of ideas and genres that it felt like there were some good ingredients in the mix, but they were not cooked all the way through. I didn't like the writing. I didn't like the characters. I did not really resonate with any of them. First, some exceptions, of course, but yeah, this book, I don't know. I don't know what people love that much about Ken Liu. It might be a personal thing. He might not be the author for me. Anyway, 2 stars. Then I read one of my favorite books of the year so far, the new Analysts' Guide to the Galaxy, Questions about Contemporary Psychoanalysis by Antonino Ferro and Luca Nicoli. This is a handbook, or it tries to be a handbook on contemporary psychoanalysis. What I loved about this book so much is that it really goes back to the roots of psychoanalysis, but from a completely fresh contemporary angle. It reminded me of why I trained as a psychoanalyst, why I do psychoanalysis every day, why I decided to be in this psychoanalytical life. It has reminded me of how much help we can give to people via psychoanalytical thinking. And it just tells you just how alive psychoanalysis is. Many people have the wrong idea that psychoanalysis is something very dry, very cerebral, that some old men, white men do in their offices, and they talk like this. But no, psychoanalysis is very much alive and thriving. It's emotional and exciting and lively and creative. And this book really talks about those roots, the creative, intersubjective roots of psychoanalysis. So I loved this. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Then I read Now is the Hour by Tom Spanbauer. This is a gay coming-of-age novel, and so I thought I would absolutely love this. I didn't. I don't want to sound like a bitter, contradictorian bitch, but this book just left a lot to be desired. I don't even remember if I gave it 2 or 3 stars, but what I can tell you is that this book felt incredibly repetitive and boring, and it could have been just a short story, honestly, but instead it's over 400 pages. I didn't get the length of the novel. It was very, very, very meandering, and I don't like when books feel unnecessarily like drawn out, and this definitely did. It had some beautiful writing and some beautiful scenes in it, but as a whole, I did not really enjoy the experience of reading the book. Also, how can I say this? This book deals a lot with cheese imagery, and I have a strong aversion to cheese. Anything related to cheese. I don't even like the word cheese. It makes me very No. And this book uses a lot of cheese metaphors, and just the word cheese is repeated throughout the book. And I could never like a book that does that. Then I read Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie. This is set in the First Law universe, and it's supposed to be a fantasy novel, but there's no fantasy in this novel, so it is not a fantasy novel, except for the fact that it takes place in the First Law world, which is a fantasy world. But anyway, I digress. This is essentially a revenge tale. It's a story about someone who wants to kill someone who wronged them. It's a very straightforward premise. It's super predictable. It's very Kill Billy, but it's well executed. I liked this book quite a lot. I couldn't say that I loved this book just because, again, this book was unnecessarily long. 665 pages? No, this book should have been 400 pages, and it would have been tighter, more trimmed and succinct and perfect. So sometimes, as a result of that, sometimes it did feel chaotic, meandering, repetitive, for no reason, honestly. But I will give Joe Abercrombie something. He can write characters and little character quirks. He's very good with voices. He's very good with those personality quirks, personality traits, and he just has something very specific in his writing that I find really funny and really interesting. So even though this book was only 3.5 stars for me, I will continue with Joe Abercrombie because I think he's very interesting as an author, as a stylist. Then I read The View from the Cheap Seats by Neil Gaiman, which is his collection of nonfiction. In this book, you will find short essays, longer essays, introductions to books, speeches that he has given throughout the years, and just some random musings from the wonderful, wondrous mind of Neil Gaiman. This book was delicious. It's exactly what you think it will be. It's Neil Gaiman sort of rambling and thinking out loud, and I just really connected with this book. It really resonated so very deeply within me, especially when he talks about literature and the act of reading and falling in love and developing that connection with a physical, tangible book, which for me is super important. Just the experience of the object of a book. He talks about a variety of topics. He talks about literature and science fiction and some other genres. He talks about different authors and specific works by those authors. He talks about comic books. He talks about films and music. There's something in here for everyone, and I just really clicked with this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read The King of Buffoons by Tanya Kinkel, which is a fantasy novel set within the same universe of The Never-Ending Story, which is my favorite book by Michael Ende. This book was a complete failure, honestly. It sort of has a very interesting premise, but by the end it just became a rehash of The Never-Ending Story. I didn't find it particularly compelling. I didn't find the characters good enough. I didn't find the writing super special. But most importantly, the thing that I thought was pretty incompetent about this book is that it started out really well, with a very unique, fresh take on the world of The Never-Ending Story, the world of Fantasia. And by the end, it just felt like it just really wanted to mimic and retread the footsteps of The Never-Ending Story. So I didn't like this book at all by the end, which is a shame considering it had some good things going for it. So I gave it only like 1 star. And then finally, the last book that I read in July, because it is July 31st and it's Harry Potter Day and J.K. Rowling Day worldwide, I read Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. But this time, I read a different edition to the one that I always reread. I always reread either the Scholastic American edition or the original Bloomsbury children's editions, the original ones. But this time I picked up a different copy of the book, which comes from a new box set. And what can I say about Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone? It's the book that made me be the person that I am in many ways, more than one. It's the book that made me fall in love with reading. I remember when I was in this very house reading this book for the first time 24 years ago, and reading this book felt like an impossible chore, like an impossible task for me. It was so long and so complex, and now I read it in just a few hours and it was as delightful as ever. And you know what? Something that still strikes me every single time that I reread this book, and boy, do I reread this book, so I know what I'm talking about. Something that I'm always still surprised by is how decent these books are. They feel so kind and warm and decent and wholesome and kind-hearted. There's like a luminous kind of decency in these books, and they are also hilarious. So yeah, I pick up these books and I feel embraced by J.K. Rowling's prose and the characters. Something else that really surprises me, just how well she does it, is characters. Of course, this is a middle grade book, so you cannot really expect the same kind of character building and character depth that you could expect from some more young adultish or just adult novels. But considering that this book is what it is, I'm surprised at how spot on and specific the characters' voices are. You can immediately tell who's talking and who's who, and there are some characters that feel just absolutely lifelike. Hermione specifically, wow, she blows my mind. Hermione really is the best character in these books, and you can see that J.K. Rowling just has a very strong affinity to this character. I mean, I think Hermione might be, in my opinion, not only my favorite character, but maybe the best drawn, executed character. Anyway, what can I say? This book is what it is. I cannot even rate this book anymore. But anyway, that's my wrap up for the month of July. Let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts on any of these books. What did you read? What did you love? What did you hate in July? And I will see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.